Generally on the AM/PM podcast, we talk to people that are digital marketers or e-commerce sellers. Today's guest is not. He actually graduated high school, started a construction business, and now owns one of the largest paving companies in the U.S., in addition to dozens of other businesses. Really, really cool story. He's a pretty convicted guy. He's got some pretty strong convictions about the way he feels about things and some of his passions in life and how he connects the quote-unquote failures in life to his now successes in life. Really, really cool stuff. It's going to be a great episode. Stay tuned. Listen to the end. We'll see you in just a second. Hey, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the AM/PM podcast. We've got another excellent guest here today that has a little bit of business experience, and he's going to share that with us. So today we have Gary Rabine, which is pronounced a little different than it looks. I had to practice that for a second. So Gary Rabine, who is actually a master in paving, in construction, essentially. And he's got a few other things under his belt, but it's a little interesting to have somebody that comes from a different industry than what we are typically focused on, the listeners here, with digital marketing and e-commerce and things like that. And as we go through the episode, you'll understand why I think this content is so relevant and so appropriate. And I'm super glad to have you here, Gary. Welcome.
Hey, thank you, Tim. It's great being here. Appreciate the fact that you think I'm worthy of being interviewed, man.
There you go. As we get through your resume a little bit, it'll be obvious to you listeners that there's some stuff here that we need to unpack and we need to dive into because it's going to be pretty valuable. So let's start off, Gary, with like your professional career. The short version was you left high school, you didn't have much of a formal education, and you had to figure out something, and you got into paving, right?
Yeah, I worked for somebody through high school doing landscaping and paving driveways, and before graduating high school, I kind of a lot of my friends were going to college and had great plans. I was a captain of my football team, I captained my wrestling team, and a lot of these guys who are on my teams were all many of them were going to college, most of them actually, and that was 1981. And they kind of laughed at me because I said I think I'm going to either start a landscaping business or a paving business. And they kind of laughed at me, and one buddy of mine said, "So you're going to be a ditch digger? Just be honest, Rabine. Your world needs ditch diggers, dude." And so sure enough, they kind of laughed at me. He said it really loud amongst a bunch of kids in study hall, embarrassed me for about 5 seconds, and then I'll never forget that 5 seconds how I felt. Then from there on, in my mind, I said, "That's all right. Someday you guys might want to work for me." And either way, so I was fortunate enough that, I liked the paving industry, and I was able to start into the paving industry soon after high school.
I feel like there's so much more there you could hit on.
Well, yeah. So no, I started paving driveways and knocking on doors to pave driveways. Had very, very lousy equipment. Really, really antiquated, junky stuff that only stuff I could afford to buy or use from other people. And my quality was probably maybe not really bad, but just bad probably. And not mediocre. We weren't mediocre, but bad. And but I was passionate enough and caring enough that I tried to solve problems when they happen. I tried to fix driveways that looked really bad, or customers that noticed the badness, right? And eventually I got to be better and better at it. Strive to be like a couple of the companies in the marketplace that were the best in the market in the county I was paving driveways in. And I had some goals, right? I had a goal to be better than them. And it took about 10 years before I could be kind of their standard with better equipment, better technology, and high quality. And I got there in about 10 years, got from zero to a couple $1 million in revenues in 10 years. The next 10 years went from $2 million to about $6 million. And so it tripled in size in the next 10 years. So 20 years to get to 6 million revenues, which is probably similar to maybe today's industry, the same industry, maybe be 12 or 15 million in revenues. And then we had this hockey stick type of thing. I started figuring out some things that really differentiated us. So I talk about innovation and differentiation a lot when I talk to young people. I mentor people in business a lot, and young CEOs and startups. And I figured out how to innovate in an industry that wasn't commonly innovative, with some really cool stuff. And that cool stuff got me to in front of customers I wouldn't have done business with otherwise. So let's say, 15 to 20 years in, really discovered some neat stuff and how to pave concrete super efficiently, as efficient as asphalt. how to really use more innovative engineering so that I can figure out how my customers could have concrete and asphalt pavements that would last longer with less cost to deliver. And really figured out our best customers were the big maintenance companies that owned a lot of real estate, people that owned millions and millions of square feet of real estate that needed somebody to trust that could maintain it. So like 15, probably 1996, 97, really got into paving for some big commercial property owners. And that was really good. And we also, but at the same time, figured out that new construction in our space, not the most rewarding in the world. You think of developers and contractors are kind of abusive sometimes. Even if they're your friends, they want you to do it for the cheapest price. They want you to wait a little longer to get paid. And I found much better customer relationships with those people that owned a lot of properties that needed me as kind of an expert, right, at their side as they bought properties, sold properties, maintained them. And they always seemed to pay me when I was done. It was kind of crazy, man. But I would do a job and they would actually want to pay me. I was like, whoa, where do I find more customers like this? And so sure enough, that's what I did. This is kind of the 80-20 rule. I figured that read the book about 80-20 back in the 90s and said, man, I got to start firing some customers. I got to start duplicating my top customers. And my top customers were those people, those facilities owners that needed great relationships and that would pay you when you're done, man. So for sure, I really discovered how to dive into that space. I started to speak at their conferences. I started to, I started my own little Rabine University. So here's a hillbilly kid that didn't go to school, and man, I'm never going to go to school, so I might as well somehow create my own university. And we did that. So we teach people about all the different types of pavements, longevity of pavements, life cycle cost of pavements, and that's been a lot of fun. We've got the most invested in a kind of a learning center for pavements and now roofs and many other things, because we've dived into many other businesses in the facility space. My passion, my expertise is still in concrete paving and asphalt paving. But so we went from that when I think about the hockey stick approach or the hockey stick thing that happens with great innovation, great service to customers and great mentoring and duplication of good things, people and processes. I figured all that out. It took a while, man. I'm a hillbilly, so it took me a while to figure all this stuff out. But years 15 to 20, I started figuring this stuff out. And sure enough, by year 30 in business, we were one of the biggest, if not the biggest, in our space in the country. So we went from a local driveway company to a regional parking lot company to a Midwestern parking lot paving company to a national paving company. And so we paved for some of the biggest paved parking lots for some of the biggest owners of distribution centers, industrial property, and commercial property today in the world. And it all happened because we figured out, I would say, three things. I do a podcast also, Tim. And in my podcast, I put together, what are these one percenters, these people that discover how to be the best of the best in their industry. What do they do differently? And gosh, it's a lot of the same stuff over and over again. There's some different things that I think people look at as their own laws of success. But the three things I really hold on to that I know have been probably part of our biggest success is this, to serve at a level that people rave about, right? To serve your customers and create a customer experience that your customers just love and remember. The other thing we think about is this differentiation, right? We have a slogan, discover the difference, because we want our customers to understand what makes us different when they do business with us. Or we'll educate them on it first, and then we want to make sure they feel it, and then we'll talk about it after, hopefully, or they talk about it after. So differentiation is a big deal for us. We're every year trying to figure out how do we differentiate each company we have beyond the competition to be world class. So innovation, serving and innovation are big. And then the last thing is mentorship. So I've been one that I look out into my industry and say, who's the best in the world? I try to seek them out and try to discover what they do different to be the best in the world. And, at first it was, I think I mentioned in my local community, I was saying, how can I be as good as these couple, residential paving companies? And I figured that out. It worked out pretty well. It took me a while, right? Then I said, okay, who's the best in commercial paving in the Chicagoland market? And I figured that out and got to be friends with the person I thought was the best. And that worked out pretty well. So then I said, okay, who's the best in the country? And that worked out well. I got to be friends and started a kind of a network and a forum between the best commercial paving companies that I seeked out. Some of them didn't want to, participate in it, but those that did, we learned a lot. And eventually, heck, it took me a long time. And I'll tell you, today I would say to anybody, think like I thought in year probably 20, this is 38, 39 years in business now, but think about like I thought in year 25 probably. And that's, okay, this is great, man. Who's the best in my community? Who's the best in the market? Who's the best in the country? Well, who the hell's the best in the world, right? I mean, if we look at every one of our business today, whether it's a brand new business we start up or it's one of those older businesses, we constantly say, who's doing it the best in the world? And if everybody could do that, and I think almost everybody has access to do that, man, it's amazing how fast you can go from A to Z, right? So my thing in my businesses today, every business we start, including the one we started here 6 months ago, one we started a year and a half ago, and one's a doors and docks company, one is an HVAC maintenance company. Those leaders, my partners, I'm very confident, want to be the best in the world. They want to kick ass. They don't want to be average. They don't want to be the Gary Rabine that was just pretty bad and strive to be okay. They want to hit the ground running, and they want to strive to be the best in the world. Well, it takes investment, it takes hard work, but if that's your goal and you have competitive people leading that, you'll get there. So that's kind of a little bit so nowadays we went from that $6 million company to the next 7 years. We did over 200 million with the businesses we started and grew. We were, the high point was about 225 million in revenues. We sold some companies. We had some big problems, like you have in business as an entrepreneur. We had some big losses in only about 5 years ago. We ended up selling a couple of the problem companies and then selling a company that was actually really good too to capitalize some financial help out of one company. So we ended up selling, knocked down about 70% of our revenues got knocked off by selling companies and downsizing to get back on track and pay off the debt we created over some big losses. And we're about double in size now than we were then, on our way back up, and probably healthier, stronger than we've ever been in our history. Even revenues don't mean as much as we might think, right? It's what are we doing to lead our industry? What are we doing to be profitable in every business we're in, and not just growing to grow revenues, right? So we have 11 companies today. We have some real estate, and my wife and I bought a golf club, so we have a private golf club that we own, and every business we have, including the golf club, strives to be world class, and they know they can be that. They know they have the bones, whether it's that golf course or it's a business, the bones to get there, right? And we can
Sure.
we can grow the talent and the muscle, hopefully, to get there.
All right, so let me unpack a few things, because you covered a lot, and some of these things are pretty valuable, I think.
Well, hey, I stopped after the first two sentences, and then you said, that wasn't enough.
That's it. So, one thing that's interesting is you go through your resume here. You've done a lot. You didn't put in these words, but you currently own the largest privately owned commercial paving company in the U.S., right? Like that's a...
Yeah, so I have a hard time saying that because I don't really know for sure, right? But we know that there's about 40,000 people that do what we do, that maintain and pave parking lots and concrete and asphalt, mostly just asphalt, some concrete. We do both, but we're confident we're in the top 3 or 4 in the country, and the ones that I know of that are our size are now owned by private equities and stuff. So we think we are, but either way, we're in the top.
Let's just assume you are, because it sounds better, right?
Yeah.
And then you've launched some other businesses. You've gone through your ups and downs, but ultimately, I would say that it's pretty impressive what you've done. But the interesting point is this example you use of a hockey stick. And for those of you that don't understand what that is, if we look at like the line of growth, it's pretty horizontal for a very long period of time. You're saying 15 or 20 years, where it's like you couldn't break free, like the real big growth didn't happen. And then all of a sudden, whether the tides turned, you figured something out, the stars aligned, for whatever reason, it takes off, which is interesting because in the world that we're at, people are so impatient. And business is tough because we put so much pressure on ourselves, and we equate our business as the personal success. And that impatience really messes us up because we can assume too early that this is not going to work long term. So you went 15 or 20 years. Through that 15 or 20 years before things really started booming, did you always feel like you were just around the corner from that big upswing, or were you shocked when that started to happen?
So, you know what, I'll tell you, Tim, I didn't know what success was going to look like. I felt pretty successful when I was a $6 million company making over $1 million a year, right? And I had goals. I had a lot of goals in business that I was going to grow and continue to grow and be good, be great at what I do. But I had to keep on seeking out a vision of success and what that would look like as I hit different stages. But my goal was probably beyond what I thought when I was a $6 million company, 17 years in, I think it was. And then I had a union battle. The union battle forced me to do a lot of things differently, and I lost everything I had over that time. This was only 2001 to 2004, somewhere in that range. Anyway, but bottom line is, at the end of the union fight, I was worth it. My wife and I were worth $5 or $6 million, and at the end of the fight, we were worth a negative $1 million. But over that time, I learned a lot because I had to take myself out of the field and fight the fight with the unions every day. Strategizing how it's going to get work done, strategizing how it's going to keep customers they were scaring away, employees and great teammates that they're scaring away. So I had to be all over them, fighting labor charges that were false labor charges. So I had a lot of challenging things that happened over that time, but it was a blessing in disguise because I had to take myself out of the day-to-day. So my right-hand guy, couple guys had to actually run the jobs, and I had to find confidence in them. Otherwise, I couldn't have done it. So what the neat thing was, I had to sell better than ever, because I had to sell to customers knowing that they're going to have union BAs on their ass if they use me, right? I had to sell to employees knowing that, come on board on my team, because if you like getting in fights and you like, the rat blowing up on the job, man, I'm the place to be. Right. So I had to sell myself better than ever to teammates working for me, to customers wanting to work for me, to vendors doing business with me, because they scared them away as well. So for me, that was a growth time like never before in my life. I studied the unions, I studied politics, and I learned a lot about that stuff. I was never involved in that stuff in my life at that point in time. I'm 39 to 41 or 2 years old at that point, right? And so I learned a lot. And through that learning, I was able to say, okay, once we got through it, now we're going to grow like hell, and we're going to grow, quality growth. And we did. We went from 6 million to 20 million in 2 years, and then continued to grow to over 200 million. But again, as we did that, I understood labor law better than any of my competitors, because I'd been dragged through the ringer. So I grew in other parts of the country where I could understand the labor law, understand where I could do it efficiently, and where I should sub out. Right. So either the lessons were incredible, but I also had to take myself out of the business. And what that did was I had to scale, and I had to duplicate, to scale. And so then I really became more of a real entrepreneur, a franchise-minded, duplicating-minded entrepreneur. And so I might still be maybe I'd be an $8 or $10 million company doing fine, making good money, right? Better than just a lifestyle company, because I could sell it for a decent buck, but not where I'd never be where I am today without that union battle, probably. And then more challenges happen over the next years. And every time I have a challenge, it costs me, whether it be a few $1 million, in some cases 15 to 17 million. I had in an 8-month period. So whatever it is, whatever those challenges are, I always say, okay, I got my butt kicked, my teeth are knocked out. I throw some new teeth in and get up and move again. And what did I learn that could be way worth the lesson? So in every case I've lost, whether it's a business that I have to shut down or a battle I lose and cost me money, always I look at what's the lesson I learned, and how do I make sure that lesson is way worth that? How do I make sure, and the union lesson for sure paid off many times over. The last loss that I had in these two companies is paying off big now and forward, because I know the lessons I learned, and I'm going to make sure they don't happen again. But again, so I guess the scaling mentality is, how do you duplicate good people and good processes? I've gotten way better at that than I ever would have been if I didn't go through the battles I've had in my businesses, right? Yeah.
And it's interesting, you're talking about, really good times. You're talking about 2001, 2004, really bad times. You even use the expression, you're getting your butt kicked. And, only 2 minutes later, you're talking about that was one of the biggest blessings, I guess, that you had, because that struggle forced you to change the way you did business, change the way you operated. And that's something that, going back to the impatience, I think entrepreneurs forget, and they don't like cherish, those struggles. If it were super easy, everybody would do it. And, there are so many people that barely skate by and they don't have a huge catastrophic problem or failure or crisis, and they think that they're doing okay. But the people that do go through those crises and get back up, lace their boots back up and keep going, usually find that loss was not necessarily lost. It was just an investment into future success.
100%. I mean, I believe that, we're going to continue to grow businesses and have fun doing it. We've got businesses that people want to buy right now that are very strong in tough times. We've got, got a couple businesses that are kind of flat and actually, not going to make money this year because of the COVID issues we have in our state and different markets we're in. Right. Overall, we have a net positive in a very good way in our group of companies. But and those ones that are suffering, we're learning, right? And those ones that we're growing exponentially in a tough time, boy, we're saying, wow, this is nice. How do we get some of this in these other businesses, right? So we're constantly growing, and no matter what, in my opinion, in entrepreneurship, you be ready to fail, be ready to fail as fast as possible, and then learn, right? Learn from every instance. For me, I believe a person that was a little more intelligent than me would probably have gotten through these times faster, maybe not even had them. But I also believe people way more intelligent than me take no risk in their life, right? They take very little risk because they're smarter than me. They know that the risk is a little higher than they want, and maybe I was too stupid, didn't understand the risk was higher than I thought, right? So for me, I'm very confident that being the kind of the hillbilly guy that always thinks I'm one of the dumbest in the room has been a blessing to me, because I'm listening, I'm learning. It may take me a little longer than the next guy, but once it's locked in, I got it, and it pays off in the long run. Compared to some of my friends who are super smart, really smart people, well educated, probably not going to get themselves in a lot of trouble financially, but probably not going to be uber successful either in the long run, right?
Yep. That goes back to that whole rich dad, poor dad kind of mentality, right? I can play by the rules and take a paycheck, or I could go a little bit rogue and maybe something big happens. So you've got these physical businesses, right? Your businesses are based on construction and service and things like that, which is unique to the podcast world, because most people that come in and they are guests on a podcast and they host a podcast, which you do. You've got, and I want you to talk about your podcast in a second, and I'm kind of framing the context for that. It's just unique. And what I found interesting was I was asking you, like, hey, why do you run your podcast? You're not using it as a digital marketing tool. You're not using it as a lead magnet. You're not trying to sell a service to these listeners, unless they need a commercial driveway or parking lot. But what was interesting is you were saying that you feel, I don't know, not empowered, but feel like you have a responsibility to help people in different various stages of the entrepreneurial journey, using lessons that you've learned, but also that you can consolidate from, like, your podcast guests. Is that an accurate statement?
Yeah, well, 100%. So my excitement in life is that, I lost my wife recently a couple of weeks ago, and watching her go through the challenges she went through with cancer it's amazing. That she's the strongest person I'd ever want to know. I mean, and to be her partner in life is amazing. But bottom line is, what do we realize when your wife passes at a young age and goes through this 4.5 years of fight, this battle, is life is short. And I kind of knew this before, but boy, it really got highlighted. Life is short. And she made an amazing mark on the world. I mean, she was the most giving person in the world. We had a couple foundations that she ran, our main foundation that gives back a ton to communities. And all she cared about was how could she help whoever she was around. So for me, I've been the guy making, building businesses, supporting our financial side of our family, while she's been the one that's been an amazing giver. Well, so again, when you're in the situation, 50, whatever, 2 to 7 years old, whatever I've been, you really look back at your life and say, gosh, what have I done? I've made money. I've created some business, created opportunities. That's been a lot of fun. And entrepreneurship's been a huge part of that. Been blessed to be born in this great country, and blessed to love a great God and all these things, right? But what am I going to do the rest of my life to make sure that that I'm looked upon as positively as she was looked upon? And I believe that giving back in the way of mentorship is a big deal. I think about my mentors in my life, Tim, and man, I smile when I think of my mentors, because without them, boy, I'd probably be nothing like I am today when it comes to business savvy and things like that. My vision has gotten very clear in my life as far as where I could take businesses, because I've been around great visionaries in business. My ability to find people to execute on businesses is because I've got great mentors that understand execution, and better than I did, right? So then I look at, so how can I affect change, and how can I make the world a better place? And I believe that sharing experiences, good and bad, not telling people how to do things, right? That's not mentorship, but sharing experiences that I've had, good and bad, that I can share with young people in business is awesome, because I know that I've inspired many people in my own businesses to be entrepreneurs as we grow more. But I've also had more experience outside my business when just people in my industry or people outside my industry to call and say, hey, Gary, would you help me out? Could you mentor me, right? And they hear me talking about mentorship all the time. So I get a lot of it, and I've had a lot of fun. So I started a mentorship organization called True Mentors, where I put together friends of mine that are successful CEOs and entrepreneurs with young startup-minded people or people in business that want to be leaders in business. And it's been a lot of fun. True Mentors has definitely inspired a lot of entrepreneurs and leaders. So now personally, I said, okay, what can I do to continue on this, right? And the chip on my shoulder is this. People that don't know me look at me as, when I speak at different things or whatever, I'm confident that some people look at me as just a rich white guy, right? He's a white guy, and he's a privileged white guy, right? And he's probably got his money handed to him, whatever. Well, I'm confident that the people that I know and that are CEOs, and I know thousands of CEOs, and I'm friends with hundreds, right? Because I'm blessed to be amongst a bunch of leadership organizations regionally and across the country, YPO and many others. And so I'm blessed that I get engaged. I meet all these great people. And most of these people that have built something because they're awesome people, because they love to serve an industry. They love to serve it better than anybody else, like I was talking about before. They usually have a higher purpose than making money. It's not about making money. It's about creating opportunity. It's about serving their market in a way that nobody else has, differentiating in a way nobody else has. So I said, I want to do podcasts. I'm so blessed to have all these different people I know. I'm going to do a podcast. I'm going to reach out to the people that I respect the most. 100% of them are givers. 100% of them are world-class at serving their markets. And almost all my 48 or 50 podcasts right now, almost every one of them are top 1% in their industry, and most of them have built it from nothing. So when you can look at those individuals, you say, wow, that guy, that gal, they're not so selfish. They built that business because they really gave a crap. They cared about people, man. They believed in God's message of serving others more than yourself. And so again, it's so much fun to interview people that I'm confident they're all of that. And many of them are billionaires. There's a lot of them worth, tens of millions, hundreds of millions, and probably got 7 or 8 billionaires on my podcast. But you'd never know. If you met any of them, you wouldn't know the difference from the billionaires to the person that's worth a few $1 million. So that's what's fun. That's what's fun about it. I'm confident that we're inspiring people to think differently.
So let's, for the rest of the time that we have in this episode, let's kind of consolidate some of the lessons that you like to share, that you're passionate about sharing to entrepreneurs, but also kind of leaning on the experience and the advice from your 50 or so other guests, right? Like, I want to really drop some knowledge here. And the first thing I'd like for you to hit on is something we talked about before we started recording, is this concept of like business being volinified, right? Like, I don't know if that's the correct word to use, but business is bad. And I'm seeing this so much lately, between my peers and just, culture. And I've run into it personally. Before I got into hardcore business, I was a civil servant. I was a firefighter. And I'll never forget when I decided, hey, I'm going to start these side hustles and these side jobs. They started blowing up. Then eventually I decided, hey, I'm going to leave the fire department after 10 years. Like my father-in-law, man, he blasted me. And, why would you do this? You're just money hungry. You're just selfish. You're all about just, it's awful. So I've seen it. I know it's in the culture, but I'd like for you to address, your thoughts on the volinification of business in our society.
Yeah, so our country is great because we're a country that believes in entrepreneurship, innovation, and solving problems. There's a reason why America has 25% of the world's GDP, right? Gross national product, cash flow, right? 25%, we're 5%, and I don't even think just under 5% of the world's population, and we have 25%. So think about that, 5 times more cash coming in than what it would take to serve ourselves, okay? The only reason that that's the case is because we've been great at building business and building innovation ideas and solutions to serve the world, right?
So let's talk a little bit about another thing that I know you're passionate about, which is replacing yourself, right? This is something that is extremely difficult for entrepreneurs because we're in the middle of our business. We are, fighting the good fight, so to speak. We're wrapped up in the day-to-day operations, and you several times have been forced to replace yourself essentially. And when you're able to replace yourself and start delegating and things like that, those ended up being times in which you were able to more quickly and rapidly scale your business, right?
Yes, absolutely. So, when I mentor people in business, I'm in very fragmented markets that I like to be in. When I say that, I do business in markets that are often mom and pops. They're very often they're anywhere from let's say $500,000 to $4 or $5 million businesses, and I love mentoring these people because I was there at one point, and I understand today what I did differently to change that. When I say change that, I was a business, in those years that really just was a paycheck for myself, and if all things went to heck, I could be hurting as far as financially. I could be, I don't have a pension, right? And I was building a business that's kind of just a paycheck, right? And so a lot of friends of mine and in my industries that we serve, they're mom and pops that just look to pretty much, just for a paycheck, and that's not very sustainable. So anything I do today, I want, if I'm valuable somewhere, I want to be valuable for a little while, but then I want to get the hell out of the way. And I say that because the only way I create value, like we have a business right now with unsolicited offers to buy it. It's a great company. I've got a great CEO that worked for me in my businesses. We spun this business out from the businesses, and he went from 0 EBITDA to 4.5 million of EBITDA in 5 years, right? So this business in the tough economy has a lot of buyers, unsolicited offers, and we may take one. We may sell some of it or all of it, okay? But the only reason that business is marketable is because I don't run the business every day, and that CEO is a young person that will stay on board to run it if they want him to, right? And guess what? If they don't want that CEO, the right-hand guy to that person is just as good as he is. And every market that business is in has a leader that is accountable, very passionate and accountable in running their operations. So he's also built a boot camp to train people in that industry. And it's a very technology maintenance industry, right? There's a business that they put robots in the ground. They televise the condition of pipe all over the country now. And that little business has the ability to grow double or triple in the next 5 years. So it could grow to 10, 15 million of EBITDA in the next 5, 6 years, in my opinion. So the value is really big on this thing, but it's only valuable because I'm not the guy they're buying, and my partner, yeah, they love him. He's a great guy, but he's got this thing built to where anybody can step in his shoes if they're a good person and they're entrepreneurial and they got some vision and some operational skills and run that business. So that business is really valuable. So why do we want to build a business that's reliant on my value or my partner's value, and that it's only worth what that person's worth then, right? So nobody's interested in buying a business that's not sustainable, that doesn't have ability to duplicate its talent. And if that's what you're building, you know what? If you're not building that, then you're building a check for yourself that goes away someday with no pension. And selling your used equipment at auction someday. Well, that's not so gratifying. So why not have a hell of a lot more fun building something and scaling it? And by the way, think of all the people you're giving opportunities to when you scale a great thing over and over and over again, right? Think about all the partnerships. We love to include people in shares of our business and stock in our businesses, and it's so much fun when you can find somebody that's passionate about something. They go in thinking it's a job, and 15 years later they go out knowing that it was an amazing blessing that they capitalized on, and now they're a millionaire, right? So that's a whole lot more fun than staying small and operating the thing with all the controls you get by the one person leader in a small business.
So we've talked about two things here. Yeah, we've talked about being able to replace yourself and scale a business and not being the bottleneck. We've also talked about this concept of building a real business, because so many people just build a paycheck, right? And they may not be profitable like they think they are. There may be no real value in the business whatsoever. When you look back at all the advice that you've received from your mentors and people on your podcast and experience that you have, what would be like the one or two biggest tips that you would give people when they audit their business, essentially, when they're thinking about their business and trying to determine, hey, is this just a hobby with a paycheck, or is this an actual business? Like, how do we know?
Well, I think can you step away from that business for a month do nothing in that business for a month? Can you step away for a month and it doesn't miss a beat, right? If you can do that, okay, you got a business that's in great shape. And I'm not saying a business that, some of the businesses are 10-month-a-year businesses, 8-month business. I'm not talking about that, right? If it's a business, if you can step away in the peak season and that it's gonna continue to move on and have no problems. I mean, little issues that somebody else has to solve instead of you, right? But if you can do that, you've got value. And so today, okay, at one point we looked at our business as building profits, right? How much profit can we squeeze out of that business, however size it was. Then at one point we looked at, how we looked at top end, top line revenues. If we can grow revenues, we're growing value, right? In the last 7-8 years, we look at exclusively one thing, and everybody should. I would recommend, or I would, in my shared experience, I would talk to any of my friends, and I do today. And I tell them to think about one thing: enterprise value appreciation. Enterprise value appreciation. So every business, there's people selling in every industry there is. There's brokers that represent every industry that there is, right? And so if you can go out and figure out, what the enterprise value your business would be, if you were a business that didn't need you in it, right? That somebody could buy you and plug and play somebody else in place, whether it's your number two person or somebody they have, right? You can then figure out what's the enterprise value. Again, if you're taken out of it, it's not worth anything. If the business operates, the business is worth basically zero, except selling your equipment or whatever. So nobody's going to be excited about that. But again, if you can every year measure enterprise value, and even quarterly, you can figure out your adjustable enterprise value appreciation. And if you can do that and understand you're growing constantly, that's what you got to watch. Some businesses grow in the enterprise value and don't even have to profit. Now, I'm not in. I have a technology company that's kind of like that, right? And then most of my businesses have to grow EBITDA to have value. But all of our businesses, no matter they're old school, paving, roofing, doors and docks, whatever it is, all of our businesses that have great technology to enhance the productivity are worth more than those that don't have. The technology companies, even the pipe televising company, is kind of half tech, half labor, half plumbing, and that business has great value because the technology is pretty extensive there. And my partners mastered the data that technology produces. I've got one company, Tim, that my son started. My son's 33, is a CEO of one of our companies, actually all of our companies now. He was a CEO of one company, though, that he spun out of our group of companies, just like the pipe televising guy did. This company probably will have the most value of any of our companies ever. And it's a company that we think it'll be a SaaS product eventually. So my son said, Dad, we could do this engineering for our customers. We had civil engineers traveling across the country looking at pavements and roofs and all that. And my son came in to run that company and said, you measured all the costs we had and said, we could save all this cost and be way more valuable to our customers if we use drones to do all this, to capture all this data. That we have experts flying across the country gathering this data with video and cameras, and we're delivering PDFs to our customer. We can change that. And so sure enough, within 5-6 months, him and I budgeted the right money to test it. And within 6 months at the latest, we had our biggest customers in the country trying this product out, piloting it along with our regular engineering and consulting. And they loved it. That company spun out after about a year of him growing it within our national company. And that company now, it's called Site, S-I-T-E. Site is kicking butt, growing leaps and bounds. And the valuation there will be a multiple of revenues. And the multiple revenues will be 10 or 15 times revenues. And this business, we're just touching the tip of the iceberg right now, and it's going to grow pretty fast in the future. We just hired a good CEO that's going to run that. But again, the difference is two things. That business, number one, is at great value to a sale someday if we want to sell it. The enterprise value already is pretty extensive, but it's also valuable to us because it serves our customers in the facility space like nobody else in the world does. So we use drones, artificial intelligence, and satellite imagery to capture every bit of a 1 million square foot distribution center of the exterior of the building. So pavements, roofs, facade, HVAC, everything outside, landscaping. And this business is just a lot of fun because it introduces our group of companies to the biggest real estate owners in the world. Not because we're great at paving, right? Because we've got this other product that can help them manage their dollars better and think differently than they have in the past.
So as we wrap up, and this is going to be a long episode, there's just so much here to unpack. I don't want to cut it too short. But closing thoughts. What I'd like for you to do is think about some encouragement. Right? You've been through some ups and downs in business. You've had some really good times, some really bad times, and obviously 2020 has been rough. You know, in the e-commerce space specifically, we've done pretty well. But those of us that are listening, you know, we have a lot of stuff going on. We have family members that may not be in e-commerce. We have friends that are struggling. You know, as a whole, things are dicey this year. What encouragement would you give to people going into 2021 that may have had a rough year in business and maybe, you know, learned some hard lessons that they didn't want to have to learn right now, and so on and so forth?
Yeah. So, I mean, you know, from my experience here, if I'm saying, you know, what do I think about that's experience here that makes the most sense for anybody? You know, I think it's, you know, when it's day to day, I look at any meeting you go into and you know, the Zoom meetings we have so often now, but any meeting you're in, you know, go into that meeting with the mind of a 10-year-old, right? The way you thought as a 10 or 11-year-old when you're inquisitive and you're learning something, you know, totally different, and you really were passionate about learning it. You know, going to the meeting as a 10-year-old, and even if you might be the smartest person in the room, you know, never think that, right? And it's easy for me because I'm never the smartest person in any room I walk into. But even if you think you are, even if you're well educated, you know, I think entrepreneurship is about constantly educating yourself passionately about whatever industry you're serving. And I think that's super important.
Absolutely. So if someone wanted to start following your podcast and listen to you know, these other business leaders that you bring in, tell us again the name of that podcast so people can find it.
Yeah, so the podcast is Ditch Digger CEO, and I've got some amazing characters on this show. I got the founder of Netflix, the founder of Redbox, the founder of Brightstar, fastest growing woman franchisor in the world. Good friend of mine, Shelly's son. I've got Jimmy John, so Jimmy John sandwiches, and billionaire sandwich guy, right? So it's so much fun to listen to these people, as well as the people that you don't hear, the names you haven't heard of before, because they're all passionate about serving. And in my opinion, it's not just serving in business; it's serving outside of their business, which is you know, as fun. Yep,
I'm putting it on my list. Ditch Digger CEO, the podcast. Well, Gary, thank you so much for being on the podcast. Thank you for voicing your opinion and giving us some of this wisdom that you've accrued over the years, sometimes through some pretty difficult lessons. That's really important. And thank you for the responsibility you take for the industry, for the community of, and when I say the industry, I mean the community of entrepreneurs, right? There's not a lot of people that have a calling to give back. And the truth is, a lot of us make the same boneheaded mistakes that someone before us made, you know, and sharing, you know, the good experiences, the bad experience will definitely help all of us grow as an entrepreneurial community together. So I appreciate you taking the time and investing the resources to help do that. That's really, really, really something I appreciate.
Thank you, Tim, and I appreciate what you do as well. You got a cool podcast, and you're doing the same stuff, bud. You're educating an industry that you love, and how fun is that, right? We're blessed to be able to do it. So thanks for all you do, and thanks for having me on today. Appreciate
and thank you all for listening. All of you that are subscribing. If you're watching YouTube, make sure to give us a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel. If you're listening on your favorite podcast platform, please leave us a positive review. That lets the podcast platforms know that you think we're doing something right, and it gives us a little boost. So if you found any value in this, please drop us a good review, and we'll see you guys on the next episode.